India, it is not merely a country, but something more beyond that. India is exceptional in that it is the cause of envy of the whole world because of its eternally rich tradition, its philosophy, and its natural resources in abundance. Still, we cannot say that this country is exclusively ours.
We are proud of India. India is my country. This utterance is yours. This utterance is mine. On one side of India stands erect the gorgeous and the great Himalayas. On the other, the roaring ocean, symbolizing the collective voice of the masses of this great country, remaining undaunted in the face of very many odds. The climate, the crops, and the precious minerals of India are exclusively our own. Our religion, our Vedas, our Puranas, our Upanishads, our eternally rich philosophy are unhesitatingly ours. This is our pride. What we have, none has in the world. Repeated plunderings, bloodshed and tyranny notwithstanding, we are the ones who alone stand erect, with heads held high. It is because we still have abundant natural resources. These resources belong only and only to this country, our mother India. But there arises a very, very pertinent question. Majority of the Indians, educated or uneducated, are unaware of. Are we bold enough right now to proclaim that this great land India is exclusively ours? With a don't care gesture, can our pride utter for a while that we are the sole controller of each and everything involving our motherland? People in general may get startled by this apparently odd but substantial question. It is quite natural that we should have been the controller of our own economy, our education, our administration, our politics, and so on. But alas, we still have to get on with an invisible curse that remains unknown to millions of the Indian populace.
Your Majesty, we are proud to be part of the Commonwealth. We are proud to be part of the Commonwealth. We are proud to be part of the Commonwealth.
We cannot say emphatically that we shall run our economy in accordance with her own will, even 70 years after the attainment of a physical independence from the unwilling hands of the Britishers. Successive governments with different political affiliations have occupied the seat at the center, either singly or through a coalition arrangement after so-called independence. Our independence is termed as so-called because there occurred transfer of power hastily accepted by Jawaharlal Nehru and his accomplices in the midnight of August 15, 1947, merely for chairs of power with the creation of two dominions, India and Pakistan, through an agreement hitherto remaining unpublished, belittling the brave and fierce battle Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose fought with imperialist powers and forcing them to flee the country as early as possible. The black, ghostly shadow that appeared on the horizon of our motherland on the ill-fated 15th August 1947 is still looming large surreptitiously. The very truth that we are not independent has been kept secret, very carefully till date, employing various strategies. Till date, the controller of our economy is not our government, knowingly acting as a shameless puppet of foreign powers under tremendous pressure. It seems quite amazing and startling to millions of Indians that a country which attained independence on August 15, 1947, and became a republic in 1950 with a constitution framed that very year is now being termed 70 years after independence as a country which is not a fully independent sovereign state. Rather, this country, our beloved Mother India, is being controlled by some unholy imperialist power. Has this demand any rational or a mere ploy to confuse the people? Our documentary focuses on this bare truth, seemingly unbelievable. To know the truth, we have to ride the time machine and go back to the pages of history. We have to find out if we are carrying as yet the seeds of curses and conspiracies sown some 70 years ago.
It was a highly turbulent time, breaking out of the Second World War and atom bomb explosion in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, twin cities of Japan. The British were economically badly hit, and they were hasty enough to grant transfer of power to India anyhow, and to flee India, being tremendously afraid of the heroic struggle fought by the valiant soldiers of the Azad Hind Fauj under the heroic leadership of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. We could have achieved total independence had we followed the path of Netaji. Let us see what happened because of the treachery, lack of farsightedness, and power-greedy attitude of some leaders of the country.
It was an intensely rough time, the last part of the Second World War. Horrible genocide in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, twin cities of Japan, as an offshoot of atom explosion for the first time in the world by America. Japan was defeated by the Allied powers, and the British economy was badly ravaged, being grievously hurt in the Second World War. Under the circumstances, the Britishers started devising ways and means to flee India, being extremely afraid of the furious battle fought by the valiant soldiers of Azad Hind government under the leadership of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. It should be remembered that the August movement of 1942 was the last movement under the leadership of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi of the National Congress, followed by mass movement across the country for immediate release of soldiers of the Azad Hind Fauj. Alongside the countrywide movement started incidents focusing breach of loyalty among British India soldiers towards the king. The British considered it imperative to make transfer of power to India by 1948. Moreover, from the point of view of safety, the Britishers decided to implement the process of transfer of power ahead of time, that is in 1947, considering situation getting adverse and inimical. But alas, the then power-hungry leaders of the National Congress and Muslim League were eager anyhow to get power, separately, not total independence, through division of the country on the basis of a two-nation theory. With the turn of events, when the British had no other option but to flee the country by handing over power without going for a war, no power-greedy leader of the country had agreed to launch a movement for total independence. Rather, they started fighting among themselves for grabbing power by any means. Situation turned worse with a naval mutiny across the country. In this juncture, Great Britain decided to send cabinet mission from London to India to formulate modalities for granting self-rule status to India. On the 9th day after this declaration, 3 members of the British cabinet, Sir Stafford Cripps, India Secretary Patrick Lawrence, and A.V. Alexander, came to India on 23rd March 1946. A tripartite meeting was held by the British India government at Simla, comprising the leaders of Congress, Muslim League, and the government itself. The sole agendum of the meeting was to ascertain modalities as to how to hand over the power by forming an interim government. Senior leaders like Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Jawaharlal Nehru, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, and Patel discussed in some details the matter of transfer of power. Initially, the Congress and the Muslim League disagreed to form an interim government as per planning of the cabinet mission. But later, both agreed to form Constituent Assembly, scrapping the plan of the cabinet mission. Muslim leaders threatened to start direct action on and from 16th August 1946, demanding a separate state named Pakistan. In the meantime, bloody communal riot broke out at Calcutta and East Bengal and eventually spread over the remote areas of Bengal, including Noakhali and later on to Punjab. Gandhi went to Noakhali to pacify the communal riots. It is quite amazing that after the settling down of August movement of 1942, neither the Congress leadership nor Gandhiji himself could organize any other movement alongside the fiery Sepoy mutiny and the mass movement across the country, vindicating the main sacrifice of the Azad Hind Fauj. If it were, India could achieve total independence without any hassle. The British government found it a bit difficult to grant India the status of self-rule or make the transfer of power through the formation of Constituent Assembly or interim government unless and until the Congress and the Muslim League could arrive at a consensus. To implement the process of handing over of power, Lord Mountbatten, 34th British Governor General and representative of the British Empire, arrived Delhi on 22nd March 1947. Lord Mountbatten initiated deliberation with the leaders of the Congress and the Muslim League, including Gandhi and Jinnah. Lord Mountbatten cleverly took up the plan to bisect India on the lookout of the divide between the Hindus and the Muslims, a resultant of the divide and rule policy of the then British government. Some power-hungry leaders of the country had assent towards the plan. Mountbatten himself had accepted the fact that Nehru acted as his personal assistant towards implementation of the process of transfer of power. Nehru, Gandhi's disciple, was perhaps conscious of the betrayal done towards total independence of the country, consequent upon transfer of power through division of her motherland. That is why, in the midnight of 15th August 1947, during transfer of power, Nehru uttered,
"Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom."
Mountbatten declared that transfer of power and partition of the country was a treaty of peace without a war. The day India was handed over power was named the day of appointed. Two dominion states were born, India and Pakistan. Dictionary meaning of dominion is loyal and state means country. Nothing was to be done by the Indians that day, even if they could have perceived the curses in the guise of these two words. India was simply identified as a country loyal to the British monarch in the name of independence. Dominion status attached to India is tantamount to the disgrace of slavery under the British monarch as it was there prior to independence. It is amazing. 70 years have elapsed after the attainment of so-called freedom, the people of the country do not know as yet the conditions underlying the transfer of power. The terms and conditions attached to the transfer of power have not been published as yet officially in this so-called independent, sovereign country. True, the people of this democratic country have the right to vote. But why? They have not the right to know as yet the writings in the historic transfer of power documents.
कभी ऊंचा देखा, कभी नीचा, कामयाबी हासिल की, कठिनाई है फिर भी सामने है, तो सिर्फ एक ही दिल में ख्वाहिश कि जहां तक ताकत है इस काम को करते जाएं.
That is what you consider as freedom for the last 70 years was a grand misconception. Let us see how India, recognized as a free sovereign nation, is still under the slavery of the British because of Commonwealth relation.
A new conspiracy was hatched which still exists with the Commonwealth relation. Even today, we are nothing more than a Commonwealth state under the British Queen. But what is the way to free ourselves from this wave-like conspiracy? To get to the root of it, we have to look 500 years back from now. There was everything like dirty politics, communal murders and treachery behind this conspiracy. But above all, there was an invisible devil's hand. Today, we are still being suppressed by the same devil's hand which has been exploiting us for more than 500 years. It was in the month of May 1493 when Pope Alexander VI divided the world into two parts, East and West, by simply drawing a line on the globe. Alexander VI considered himself the sole representative of God and wanted to be the absolute ruler of the world. The game started 500 years ago. Portugal was permitted to capture and rob the countries of the East, and Spain was permitted to rule the Western countries. Accordingly, Portuguese pirate Vasco da Gama arrived in India. The same Vasco da Gama who was portrayed as discoverer and tourist by conspiring historians had first shown the way to rob this country by means of genocide and rapes. It is to be remembered that Vasco da Gama was unable to entrench into the Muslim countries, but succeeded to establish Portuguese rule in India by treachery, by getting into this country as a guest of the kind-hearted native kings. The succeeding history is more treacherous. Mighty countries had played several times with the fate of this country, and we were handed over from one country to another as a prostitute. Accordingly, the British prince was given the town of Mumbai as a gift after marriage with the Portuguese princess, and was given a free hand for robbery and business in Mumbai. Seeing the wealth of this country, the British became greedy and started taking control over almost all parts of India, keeping the Portuguese aside. In 1858, India was declared a subject under the British as per the order of Queen Victoria, and India thus turned into a British colony under the name British India. Everything, such as control and wealth of this country, belonged to the British. During World War II, the British economy was badly ravaged, compelling the British to keep India as mortgage to America. We do not know the conditions of the mortgage, and it is not clear as yet whether the same still exists or not. Perhaps most of the key conditions of mortgage still persist and lie with America, and that is why there are all the fights we have to go through on day-to-day basis. To explore the truth, there is need for research and movement across the country.
What is actually Commonwealth relation by which India is still bound today? Let us try to know in details.
History books suggest that India became free on 15th August 1947 after 200 years of British rule. But what is the matter of fact? The British had left the country, creating two dominion states, India and Pakistan, handing over some limited powers through the conferment of transfer of power. In real terms, India and Pakistan came into existence as two states loyal to the Queen. Later, courtesy to jugglery of words, they were termed as Commonwealth states in lieu of Dominion states. "72 countries in the world, which were once ruled by the British, are members of the Commonwealth, and the self-proclaimed head of the states in the Commonwealth is the British Queen. There is no democratic way to elect the leader of the Commonwealth. It is an undeclared fact that the British forever shall be the head of the organization, and the British Parliament shall decide the policies of the Commonwealth states." Though India declared itself a sovereign republic in the year 1950, there is clear mention in London Declaration that India became sovereign republic, remaining within the Commonwealth. Even today, the Indians have neither the right to know the conditions of the Indian Independence Act, containing 40,000 pages, nor the agreements underlying the Commonwealth. It simply means, even today, we are not independent. If Commonwealth means equal status for member states, then why this discrimination that whereas the British Queen does not require visa to come to India, our President and Prime Minister would require visa to travel to England? It is learnt that the Indian Supreme Court is bound to abide by the verdict of the Supreme Court of England. It is amazing and alarming, and not only that, it is laid down in the British law that even though the conditions underlying Indian Independence Act could be repealed by the British Constitution, India would straightway turn into British subject again as and when the Indian Independence Act is repealed. It is a dangerous dilemma indeed. the British exercised the ruling that the conditions of the Indian Independence Act be kept secret for 50 years. Since 1947, and the ruling was accepted by the Congress government as mere British representative. But this embargo was extended to another 20 years during the Prime Ministership of Sri Indra Kumar Gujral. There is perhaps no need for mention as to who is responsible and why for this mysterious extension of embargo for another 20 years. This embargo comes to an end in 2017, and all of India is looking forward towards Narendra Modi for honorable positive action. Can we anticipate that the people of India shall eventually come to know the terms and conditions behind the transfer of power by the British? Are the Indians still bounded by these conditions? Are we citizens of independent India in the real sense of the term? Or are we citizens of the British Commonwealth having kept us bound by very many conditions? It is surprising that America, who was once ruled by the British, is not itself a member state of the Commonwealth. The reason is that America has surpassed England both economically and militarily. Britain is dependent on America on many fronts. Besides, America is the controller of one of the major organizations like the UNO. Bilderberg is also working in the same direction. The members of the Bilderberg comprise 300 very powerful and influential families of the world. For example, Emperor of Japan, the family of George Bush, the family of Henry Kissinger, the Rothschild and Rockefeller families, the families of many powerful countries of the world are members of the Bilderberg organization. They convene clandestine annual meeting. It is decided in the meeting to find ways to exploit and subdue the third world countries. The members decide policies to bring the third world countries under control in the form of planning wars among nations or ruining them economically.
Now the question arises, how can we come out of the vicious cycle of Commonwealth? It is a very, very pertinent question, and the very need of the day is the collective voice of the masses of this great country.
Now the moot question arises, can we come out of the Commonwealth? The answer is simple now, because everything of ours is tied by the same invisible knot.
Your Majesty, we are proud to be part of the Commonwealth. We are proud to be part of the Commonwealth. We are proud to be part of the Commonwealth.
Black and white, officially, still we are the Dominion. In 47, 15th August, the transfer of power from the British hand to the Indian hands, this India was a Dominion under the British Commonwealth. In the Commonwealth, under the British throne. And that condition has not changed. We are still the member of the Commonwealth, and we are still in Dominion status. This can be explained in two ways. One, all the members in the Commonwealth is under the British throne. They are the head of the Commonwealth is the British monarch. We are Dominion like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, we are Dominions. The people of this country, the politicians, they claim that in 50 they declare republic in the parliament. The problem is the transfer of power is a bilateral agreement between British authority and the India leaders. Is a bilateral agreement. One side cannot change the status. If we change the status or try to change, take a resolution that must be ratified in the British Parliament. Because the transfer of power is a product of the Indian Independence Bill that was passed in the British Parliament. Until and unless that is ratified, our condition is ratified by the British, we cannot claim unilaterally we are republic.
Pakistan showed the desperation to come out of the Commonwealth, but was compelled to go back because of the threat of economic sanctions and under international pressure. India is one among the third world countries who have fallen a prey to the heinous conspiracy to continue unbridled exploitation through ruination of sovereignty. We are being tossed here and there at will like a football. Our country was at the top in agriculture. What happened? Habits of farmers have been slowly changed. We are now dependent on the so-called developed economies for purchase of seeds, manures, tractors, mechanical threshers, harvesters, and so on. They will now dictate our actions. Same is the case for blacksmith, tailors, cobblers, carpenters, artisans in the handicrafts industry who are losing their jobs.
हमारे अब देश का संविधान आप देखिए, तो संविधान में तो इंडिविजुअल सेंट्रिक है। जो 300 साल पहले, 200 साल पहले पश्चिम के देशों में विचार चला था हॉब्स का, लॉक का, मिल का, वो इंडिविजुअलिज्म पर है। लेकिन आप देखिए क्यूबा, उसके संविधान में फैमिली यूनिट को प्रधानता दी गई है, भारत में नहीं दी गई है। जबकि भारत में आप गौर करें तो परिवार ही के कारण तो चलता है सब। बेरोजगार भी रहता है तो घर पर ही उसको संभाल लिया जाता है। बड़े बूढ़े माँ बाप रहते हैं, वो भी घर पे ही चलते हैं। घर में एक आदमी को भी नौकरी मिले तो एक कमाए 10 खाए, ये स्थिति भारत की है। अगर उनकी तरह से हम भारत को बनाना चाहेंगे तो मुश्किल हो जाएगी। देखिए भारत में 70 करोड़ लोग ऐसे हैं फिर जिनको आप डिग्निटी ऑफ लाइफ के साथ पैसा देना हो तो 10,000 रुपये महीने तो देना पड़ेगा, तो लाख रुपया साल का देना पड़ेगा। तो आपको साल में तो 70 लाख करोड़ की ज़रूरत पड़ेगी, लेकिन बजट ही हमारा कितने का है। इसलिए वहाँ की योजना यहाँ पर चलावे तो ठीक नहीं है। देसी मुर्गी विलायती बोल की स्थिति रहेगी, उससे दुर्दशा और बढ़ी है, बढ़ भी सकती है।
All the control is in one hand. All the fronts, political, social, economic, and religious, are tied by the same knot. The elected head of the nation is handed over do's and don'ts in a European country, and surprisingly it is true. On the other hand, our arch problem is that we are dependent on the powerful nations for purchase and supply of artilleries. That is why whenever we dare flout their dictates, they impose control on things like artillery, electricity, fuel, etc. At their will and for their gains, we are forced to fight battles with neighboring countries. What about the Kargil War? India was made to be attacked by Pakistan under pressure from America when India was hesitant in regard to accepting the global open market economy system. India was threatened by supplying arms to Pakistan. Eventually, when India was ready to abide by the conditions underlying the open market economy, France started supplying weapons to India. Not only that, under American pressure, India was compelled to allow Pakistan time to retreat slowly and safely. that story remained unpublished. Even today, when there is smell of arms, ammunitions and burnt flesh in the border, we are buckled under American pressure to follow their dictates against our will. It is very clear we have nothing to do because the control is in the hands of the big brothers. That is why we can neither come out of the Commonwealth GST is not there in America, but it has been imposed on us. During long Congress regime, it became clear on numerous occasions that the country's future had been put to dock by the Congress as representative of the British. Gandhi, as a controller, even after leaving the Congress, had put the last nail on the coffin of this country in collusion with the British. Power-hankering Nehru had fueled the flame. In the successive years, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, and other members of the Gandhi family followed the same path and were amply rewarded. It is worth mentioning that Mountbatten handed over a check for £50,000 from the British Exchequer to Rajiv Gandhi, the grandson of Nehru, for building a Nehru memorial, considering him his very intimate right-hand fellow. There is no corroborative evidence in regard to other Indian prime ministers receiving such rewards in such huge amounts. It was due to the farsightedness of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the celibate world leader and the burning patriot, that the first provisional India government had been formed in the name of Azad Hind government, which was recognized by 18 countries around the globe. That government has not been declared defunct as yet. If that government were in power today, we would have seen India as a totally independent sovereign state, standing erect with a luminous countenance, free from all the vices like injustice, greed, corruption, dishonesty, violence, secessionism, envy, and jealousy. So the only way to come out of this vicious circle is to get prepared for another war, and perhaps the last war and the true war for total independence following Netaji's ideology. It would be the last war to get ourselves free from the vicious cycle of exploitation. So the clarion call to 130 crores of Indians: plunge yourselves into the fight for independence so that India would usher into a new morning, symbolizing a new era of peaceful divine order. So let us arise right now and plunge yourselves wholeheartedly into the fight for independence. Only then India will turn into divine India of Swami Vivekananda and get to the top of the world with a divine image and plan in the geographic map of the world in terms of culture, education, health, economic development and restoration of a healthy political system.